Okay, so Generation Lost, right? It's a comedy horror series from the mind of Ranboo Live and their team. Real quick warning before we begin. This is analyzing the implications of the story, so it will include talk about death, gore, cannibalism, biblical imagery, mind control, and false realities. This is also going to have an incredible amount of spoilers, so if you have not seen it, I really recommend you do, especially with the Founder's Cut and edited movie-like version coming out soon. It's also going to be very rambly, I apologize in advance. Generation Lost, The Social Experiments, is a prequel story told via 3 interactive live streams, along with teaser clips. The story follows the hero, Ranboo, as he progresses through a video game-like world. The audience, us viewers, vote on the actions he takes and control his environment. The first episode leans far heavier on the comedy side of comedy horror, with the main character waking up in a cabin only to participate in a cooking show for the slime demon, Charlie Slimecicle, who haunts/lives in said cabin. He finds 2 other characters, Sneak and a skeleton named Frank. Through a video game-like fight scenes, he dries up Slimecicle into a rag. During the stream, it glitched as a mysterious figure attempted to communicate with Ranboo. That figure is Hetch, who claims to be a hacker helping Ranboo get out of the show. Ranboo is confused due to the fact that his mask alters his perception of reality, so while we the viewers view this world as obviously fake, to him it's his real life. After defeating Slimecicle, he walks out of the cabin door only to enter a warehouse and is sedated by 2 people wearing rat masks. He's taken captive by the Puzzler, and a series of Saw-like games take place with more and more glitches showing breaks in reality. These glitches eventually accumulate into Hetch being able to turn off Ranboo's mask and show him the truth. Ranboo realizes he wasn't in a warehouse at all, and was actually being filmed in an abandoned mall. The 3rd and final episode follows Ranboo, believing he's escaped the show and is now attempting to escape the mall. He brings his friend Slimecicle as they try to escape the masked guards. Sneak also attempts to escape, but is killed by a wiry monster. Ranboo and Charlie Slimecicle find Hetch bleeding out. Hetch tells them to hit a button that will shut everything down. On the way to get to the button, Charlie is attacked and killed by the monster. Ranboo manages to hit the button, stopping all the guards in their tracks. He thinks he is done and heads to the exit only to be grabbed by Hetch. The viewers next see him strung up to the wall, with a choice to kill him or have him live and keep him in his internal torment. The viewers eventually choose to kill him. Hetch was never a hacker. He and Showfall Media were instead doing social experiments on Ranboo and or the viewers to see a person's reaction to having their sense of reality broken. I'm going to be analyzing the idea of slime being blood, the unintentional meta-meaning about creators in the public eye, foreshadowing, and biblical references, along with a couple other tidbits and ideas that are a bit smaller. There is a very heavy implication that the slime the viewers and characters see is actually a way the show censors blood. In episode 2, when Ranboo is doing the dissection on Charlie Slimecicle, the screen momentarily glitches, and the green slime turns red as his characters scream. As well as in episode 3, there's a bucket full of red liquid labeled slime. There's also a pinboard showing a red-green color blind test labeled, "Are you seeing what you should be?" The masked people are supposed to be unable to distinguish red and green, allowing them not to panic when faced with blood and violence, as they're being told it's only slime. This new knowledge adds another level of horror, especially to the first episode, so I'm going to list out all the ways the gore was censored by Showfall Media. Charlie is first seen as a demon covered in slime. Ranboo is also forced to cook with several slime ingredients that is then fed to Charlie. The finished product the microwave makes becomes grotesque with the new knowledge that the funny slime we're seeing is far more likely to be human remains. Him being fed this mixture in the first episode also probably explains how the necessary items were able to be in his stomach for episode 2. All the characters get upset when slime touches them, claiming it won't get off. Charlie dumps slime onto Sneak's head. Charlie has a wooden chest full of slime. Also, the fake-looking skeleton Frank is very likely a sensitized version of real human remains, as on a pinboard we see a file for a deceased person named Frank. I'm not entirely sure what the viewer-created monster is supposed to be in reality. I hope it's not like people put together, though some people think it's actually the monster security later seen in the series. In episode 2, we already discussed how the original silly dissection is far more likely to be horrific. This is also shown when the puzzler pulls a hat from Charlie's stomach and lays it upon Sneak's head. Either the hat itself or the feeling of slime, once again being on his head, breaks Sneak out of his mind control, seeing things for what they truly are. He sees his friend on an operating table bleeding out, he sees a rotting corpse next to him, he sees the cameras and the actors, so he runs, promising Ranboo he will find a way to get them out. His freedom doesn't last long as he's reprogrammed and placed back into the game. Also, episode 3 shows Ranboo stabbing a man and wires coming out of him instead of blood. This could be another form of covering up gore, or it could be literal, implying the workers was robotic in some way. Episode 2 has the most deaths, as the slime being shown mixes with the actual blood showing. Charlie's implied to die on the operating table, Nikki's shot in a bathroom stall, Ethan's crushed on a rotating wall, Vinny is crushed by a cartoonic falling anvil, more likely hit his head against the wall maybe. The puzzler is blown up, and Sneak holds back Austin when the hole in the wall crushes them. Of course, none of these deaths matter, because while they will suffer, Shofal still needs them to act. The only death that truly matters is the one that's asked for in the end. The story of the social experiment can also be viewed through the lens of someone who creates for the public. The idea of being trapped in a story and the viewers forcing you to keep acting in a game you no longer want to play reflects how some creators gain an audience for one type of content and become stuck in the character the audience sees them as, only becoming free when the audience themselves choose to kill that idea of them. This is also shown in the way that people were portrayed in episode 2. All the guest stars were well-known streamers, and each one plays their character as a surface-level version of how the audience views them. Nikki, for example, is displayed only as nice, smiling to the audience despite being seen crying only a moment prior. Some people only view streamers for the characters they portray online or the personalities they show the camera. This obviously isn't the full extent of that person's character, so having Shofal Media force these people to play those caricatures of themselves could reflect the way the real-life creators get trapped by their audience. This applies for any type of creation, though not just streaming. The story does an excellent job of foreshadowing the twist at the end, from Ranboo's first line about how it wasn't supposed to be like this, the mask flashing, and the SOS Morse code that allows the viewers to first see that something is wrong with the show. There's also foreshadowing with the red key being inside the bat and Ranboo having to dig inside of it, just like how he has to dig inside of Charlie. When the glitches first appear, the viewers think that it's the true reality, but even Hedge's betrayal is foreshadowed, with the character Scribbles saying that we, Shofal Media, are still in control. While we originally thought it was just Shofal lying and trying to cover the fact they were getting hacked, it really is just them foreshadowing that Hedge was on their side all along. This is also shown in the cameras that usually have an excuse for them being there, suddenly take on a more cinematic view towards the end, showing that all of this was just Shofal's story. Ranboo's death is also foreshadowed, with his sleeping pose at the very start, and his bow at the false end resembling how he's laid out in the last scene. Even though there was still a chance the audience could have chosen for him to live, Ranboo, the creator, stated that the death scene was planned out first and the story was built around it, which allows every action the character took to reflect his inevitable demise. There's also a large amount of biblical imagery throughout the story, as Ranboo's character takes on a martyr or Jesus-like form, someone who is always going to die. The biblical references start off small and comedic, like the characters being sent to Christian hell, as well as the cross-stitch quote above Charlie's bed reading, "The Lord bless you and keep you." Bats are also significant in episode 1, but only have 3 references in the Bible, 2 of which are categorizing them as birds not to be eaten. The third reference describes people casting away their idols of gold and silver and giving it to the moles and bats. So give your money to bats, I guess. If we're implying that the slime Charlie eats is human remains, the biblical references to cannibalism are actually fewer than you would think. Most of them refer to a prophecy of famine a group of people would have that would force them to eat their loved ones and their children. Though there is a concept of bread and wine being the blood and body of Christ, so that might be something, but there's actually a well-known Greek myth about a man who forces the gods to eat his son without their knowledge and is punished. While the connections are slightly fewer biblically, hidden/forced cannibalism is prevalent fear in society dating back ages. Episode 2 has fewer obvious connections to the Bible, but there are similarities between Charlie's situation and the story of the Binding of Isaac, which is about a father and a son, Isaac. The father is told to sacrifice his son on a mountain, but after he binds him and is about to stab him, he's stopped by an angel saying that it was a test / they never wanted him to actually kill his son. Charlie's story resembles Isaac's if the angel showed up a few minutes too late, especially considering the puzzler goes back on his word saying how he never wanted Ranboo to actually stab him. Isaac's story of a human father sacrificing his son for God is kind of ironic, as it kind of reflects God sacrificing his son, Jesus, for humans, so I don't know. Sneak is also anointed with slime/blood. This kind of oil and blood mixture anointments are referenced in the Bible, but I view it more as like a slime baptism. The main biblical reference is the running theme of being controlled by some higher and unseen force. Ranboo never has a choice in his actions. The only 2 choices he made are being saving Charlie and choosing the wrong code. He never got the chance to have a sense of self. Ranboo the Created stated that the main goal was to see if he can get a large group of people to execute someone. This voting system actually does appear in the Bible about Jesus' crucifixion, about how the crowd ramped each other up shouting for his execution. The executor himself states that now the blood was on their hands instead of his, which is similar to the idea of Shofal Media putting on the viewers to decide Ranboo's fate, despite the fact that they're the ones actually doing the action. The most obvious reference is of course the crucifixion-like pose Ranboo dies in. As an innocent person who's killed for other people's actions, he becomes a Jesus-like figure in the story. Okay, now the ideas that are too small to have their own sections. Ranboo the Creator has stated that each episode references a different era of horror, the first being inspired by the cabin in the woods / haunted house theme, as well as the fact that demons and ghosts are kind of some of the oldest spooky stories. There's also reference to Nightmare on Elm Street, with the wall stretching as Ranboo takes a nap. One could also argue that the references to Cook 'N Show counts as horror. Episode 2 is far more obvious in referencing the Saw movies, with the concept itself along with the toilet and carousel props. Episode 3 follows more modern horror themes, with false realities and the focus on analog horror. There's also the theory that Charlie's uncle was raised by Shofall Media, as his cabin displays children's toys and photos. He also doesn't have any memory outside of Shofall, saying that he grew up in the cabin, whereas Ranboo said only that he was in the cabin. This idea that Charlie, at the very least, was around much longer than the others would explain how he knows about the mousetrap cage, as well as how he knows about Ranboo despite not being introduced to him. Another theory is that Ranboo's actually escaped before. The missing posters made by Shofall Media for Ranboo implied that he either had gone missing or they were expecting him to. There's also the quote he says at the beginning, "It was not supposed to go like this," possibly implying that he got out and was only back where he had started, as well as Hetch's line about the 4 different codes saying, quote, "They must have increased security since last time," implying that this has happened before. This is also a random tidbit, I don't have a connection to anything, but Sneak seems fascinated with letter building blocks, using them in both episode 1 and 2, so if anyone knows what that's about, let me know, because I have no clue. This is a wonderful story showing just one part of Shofall Media's control and willingness to do violence. It's a warning, a tragedy where every character has to die in order to serve as an example for the main characters in the main story. As Ranboo stated, this is just a prequel and there's more to come, and I can't wait to see where the story goes.